So that's where we're at now. So the country is as unsafe as it has ever been. The country is poorer than it has ever been. The country is more divided than it has ever been. So everything is at an all-time. Every negative metric you can think of, the country is at an all-time high, and every positive metric you can think of. Nigeria is currently has the highest number of citizens in extreme poverty in the entire world. So we have well over 100 million people in extreme poverty.
Welcome back to Drop the Mask. I'm your host, Jason, and I'm very honored today to be joined by this next guest. He is living in Nigeria, trying to spread the gospel of Austrian economics through the Nigerian Liberty Project. And because of the political climate in his home country, he goes by the pseudonym Econ Bro. Mr. Bro, welcome to the show.
Bro, it's fine. Mr. Bro.
Okay.
That was funny. That was hilarious. Everyone calls me Econ. It's great to be here. We tried doing this like 3 times now. This is the 3rd time. It's really, really great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Happy to have you. 3rd time's the charm. I'm glad we finally got it working. Can you give us a quick introduction? Tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you're up to.
So I am an Austro-libertarian. I am a libertarian in the Austrian tradition, the Rothbardian tradition to be specific. I'm Christian. That's right. Read Rothbard. So I'm Christian, and that's my ultimate identity. I am a Christian before anything else. Rothbardian second, and I guess Nigerian third. There isn't that much to me. Although these 3 things I have mentioned, Christianity, Rothbardianism, and being Nigerian, there's so much to those things. But that's how I describe myself. And since I came to learn the values of liberty, I made it a responsibility to teach what I've learned to my countrymen in hopes that things could change in this country in maybe a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. That's who I am and what I do.
Yeah, and how do you do that? How do you go around talking about this? You just go up to people on the street or what?
I do that sometimes. It's not like I just walk up
Yeah?
to random people and touch them and say, "Hey, want you care to know about liberty?" I don't do that, but sometimes I find myself in the marketplace. Maybe I go shopping, I go to buy. I believe Mark called it a farmers market, right? We have these markets that you guys would call farmers markets. We have lots of those here. So sometimes I go to the market to buy meat or some vegetables or whatever, and people are complaining about how prices are so high, and then I take the opportunity to talk to them about these things. So I do that. But apart from that, I have a program called the Nigerian Liberty Project, where I literally go from university campus to university campus, talking to young people about these ideas. Mostly students of economics, but students of political philosophy um, and law and that kind of thing. So yeah, so I do this both officially and unofficially. So if I talk about this stuff whenever I get the chance. But officially, I have a platform, the Nigerian Liberty Project, for doing this.
So when you talk to people in the market, what's the reception like? Do you get people listening, or do they just tell you to go away?
Oh no, they always tell me to. They always enjoy. They never tell me to go away. That's never happened. At least not yet. Hopefully, it never gets to
Okay.
happen. But I gave a particular story on Mark's podcast, where I went to the market to buy some stuff, and um, there's this guy I usually buy stuff from, and as I was approaching him, he kept lamenting, saying prices are his costs have gone up, so he has to increase prices for me. And then I told him, I trust you. You're not trying to rip me off. I've been doing business with you for years now. And he kept blaming it
Hmm.
on the suppliers, saying things are too expensive. They're hiking the prices. So I started to explain to him how the Central Bank of Nigeria is entirely responsible for why prices keep rising incessantly. And little did I know that there were other people who were around who were listening as well. There was a woman who was obviously listening with her daughter, and then some other people were also paying attention to what I was saying. And everyone walked away like, I can't believe this. And then I made, so this was 2 years ago, so I made some predictions. I predicted that things were going to get far worse and things were going to get more expensive. Businesses were going to shut down. Um, and it's not some wizardry or anything. It's just understanding um, the Austrian business cycle theory. You know, you know that when the government expands money and credit, eventually it leads to malinvestment, which eventually leads to businesses collapsing and also high prices and so on. So when I break, although when I'm talking to them, I don't tell them about the Austrian business cycle. I just try my best to, because some of these people are uneducated. When I go to the universities, I talk Austrian business cycle. I can say that when I'm there because the students already know what a business cycle is. But when I'm talking in the marketplace, I just tell them government prints money. So I use the water diamond paradox. I found that it helps people understand the concept of subjective values and how if a commodity supply is increased, then its value drops, and therefore the price falls as well. So I found that it's a very useful tool, the water diamond or bread gold paradox. Whenever I use it to explain to the layman, right, and then everybody gets it. So I tell them as the central bank is printing more money, it begins to lose its value, and then prices start to um, um, increase. So they tend to get that. So everyone always walks away thinking that makes a lot of sense. I've never had anyone tell me you don't know what you're saying. I only get that on Twitter and when I'm talking to economics professors and political commentators, analysts. You know, the educated are the ones with whom I have difficulty. But the layman on the street tends to understand intuitively these things. So yeah, that's
Hmm.
in a
That's
nutshell.
really interesting that the businessman himself didn't really understand why his suppliers were hiking prices when I'm sure he also had to deal with raising his own prices because of that. So he didn't put that
Right,
together.
right, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, some of these people, as I've said, are uneducated, right? They don't even have what you would call an elementary school education. Some of these people, not all of them, but some of them don't even have elementary school education. Some of them have only gone as far as elementary school, some as far as high school, what you would call high school. We call them primary and secondary school. Yeah. So um, some people don't have any education at all. So they just see prices being high and then they think it must be greed, you know. So
Well, what is the situation in Nigeria? Because I'm looking on paper on at the government, and it looks very similar to the United States. You've got the three branches. You've got the legislature with the bicameral legislature. 34 different states, I think I saw,
36.
and 36. Okay,
Yeah.
and so yeah, you've got the Democratic Republic. Everything should be peachy, right? But what's really going on there?
Um, well, it depends on what exactly you're asking. When you say what's going on, you be more specific because a
I
whole lot
guess,
is going
yeah, economically, let's start with that. How's the economy there?
on. It's terrible. It has always been terrible since I was born. I've been on this earth for almost 4 decades, and I was born privileged here in this country. Right, I was fortunate enough to be born into a family where both my parents worked for the government and they were like high level officials here. Right, so no one gets anything done without the government here. The richest um, man in Africa, the richest black man on earth is from my country. I don't know if you know that. The richest
No?
black person is from Nigeria, and they call him any government in power. It's a nickname for him, AGIP, right? So he's pretty much a crony capitalist. So my point is, even the richest man here can't make it without some form of government support or the other. And we could get into that much later about how the government supports him and a couple of other cronies. There's nothing complicated. It's just basically regulate they regulate competition out of the market. So that's pretty much how that happened. So anyway, my parents were privileged to work with the government because that's the only way anyone can make money in this country, like really make money in this country. I had good education, primary, secondary level. Eventually things started to, I lost my father at an early age, relatively early, and things started to go down south for my family. But it wasn't really bad. I was still sheltered from it until, anyway. So my point, Nigeria isn't
Hmm.
a rich country, but I grew up not rich, but not poor either. I did pretty well for myself. But the country has always been a poor country. Nigeria is terribly poor, and democracy came in the year 99, and um, we were under a military dictatorship before that. So many military dictatorship. We had bloody coup d'etat after bloody coup d'etat. It was something else. So in 99, democracy came to Nigeria and things started to pick up a bit because sanctions were lifted from Nigeria, seeing as the president was democratically elected and was not a military
Hmm.
dictator. More people were willing to do business with Nigeria. So the internet came in, mobile phones came in. So a few years after we had democracy, things started to pick up, right? And then um, we got the president after. So they have 4-year terms. The president ran for he stayed there. He was in office for 8 years, 2 terms, and after he left, he put in a man that everyone knew was dying, right? He just put, so it's things are very strange here. We know how in the now what you guys experience with Joe Biden, um, Barack Obama just propping up a dead man, a half dead man, and putting him out there to. So that's new to you guys, but that's perfectly normal for that kind of thing to happen here. You can't you can't make it in politics if you don't have a political godfather. It's a scourge in this
Hmm.
country, right? Since the first democratically elected president of the Second Republic, I believe, in '99, we've not had since '99. We've not had a president that, or a governor, or a minister that didn't have some godfather or that wasn't a godfather himself. There's an interesting documentary I'll send you after this that would blow your mind how weird. So basically, it's like the mafia, right? You and I know the government, the state is the
Yeah.
mafia, but it's more mafia like here than it is um, in other parts of the world. Anyway, so the government in the president after in '99 in 2007 when he left, he installed a puppet, and I know people are going to be mad, but he really, and I know this because my parents were in government at the time, right? So I have the insider scoop on what happened in 2007. So they put in a man who was practically dead. He died in office. The His wife and the cabal, they hid his death for a long time, much longer than the official records would tell you. Because everything I'm saying is verifiable. You could check. But I'm saying that even
Hmm.
what the records say, he was dead for much longer. Like my mother told me when um the president died, she was like, "This guy is gone," and people knew he was dead months after. So anyway, so his vice became the president, and I don't know if this is true, but his vice was called a drunk. He used to get drunk in the office, and everything pretty
Hmm.
much everything went crazy under his device when he became president. God help me. I hope I'm not boring you with this stuff because it's
This is very interesting and very familiar. We have a half dead president,
oh,
and the vice president is a drunk.
who's it? Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, okay, okay. I see the. As I said, it's new to you guys. It's old, very old news to us. You know. So
Yeah.
so 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 when this vice president eventually became the president, so interesting story about the vice president. His name is Jonathan. Good luck, Jonathan. We have weird names here. So his name is Good Luck.
Mm-hmm.
That's his first name, and then Jonathan is a common name, right? So President Good Luck or Vice President Good Luck became President Good Luck Jonathan. Now, before he became vice president, he was the governor of a state, and he became governor of his state because he was deputy governor, or he became governor because his the governor ahead of his boss, the governor, was involved in some financial scandal, and he lost his seat. You know, he was given the boot, so the deputy became the governor. Now, um, how do I explain this? I don't know how to say. I don't know the English word for what I want to say is, but I'll try my best to explain it. So
Okay.
um okay, I guess the best word to use is pairs. Politicians here, the way politics works here, politicians have to pay their dues. You can't just have a nobody rise and become president. You can't have that kind of thing happen, right? So you have to go
Mm-hmm.
through stages. So let's say you start as a local government chairman. Maybe I would equate that to being a mayor. Let's assume you start there, and then you build up to that, to becoming maybe a member of the House of Representatives, what you guys call Congress, and then maybe a
Mm-hmm.
lower level, and then you become governor, and then so that's how it goes, right? You keep going higher. So this man went from deputy governor, right, to president in just a few short years. First, because his boss, the governor, was involved in some financial scandal that made him lose his job, and then because his boss, as the vice president, died in office. So out of nowhere, he became the boss of people who are way ahead of him in the political hierarchy. I don't know if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So so he became the boss of people who are much higher than he is. It's not an official hierarchy, but everyone just knows this, right? Um, yeah. So I really hope that makes
So
sense.
then people didn't like that, I would guess. The
So
people that
so they
were
didn't like
above him. Yeah.
so they didn't like that. They didn't like that. So they
Yeah.
didn't submit to him. And then state governors were doing all kinds. Everybody was just doing his own thing, and not in a good way, right? It wasn't the good kind of anarchy, as if there is any bad kind of anarchy. But he wasn't. So everyone was just doing his own thing. It was terrible, right? Then that was when we had Boko Haram. I'm sure you've heard of Boko Haram. At one time, they were the
Mhm.
largest terrorist organization in the world, the most dangerous terrorist organization in the world. So Boko Haram reigned under him, and whether or not Nigerians would admit it, it was all to discredit him, to make him look worse than he actually was. So the country was a mess
Mhm.
um, under him. Now, the man who was the spokesperson for Boko Haram, please, um, just think of how crazy this is. The man who was the spokesperson for Boko Haram ran against the president and won in 2015.
Wow.
This man, so this spokesperson, the man Boko Haram chose to be their spokesperson, who actually was a president during the military era. He was now Boko Haram went about killing, murdering people, sending people out of their villages, and kidnapping. You heard the Bring Back Our Girls thing. They
Hmm.
kidnapped over 200 schoolgirls and forced them into marriages. We still don't know what happened to those girls since 2014. So now the man who was the Boko Haram spokesperson became the president. Pardon my French. I don't normally swear, but I would just do this now. The country went to absolute shit on his watch. I mean, things were so that was 2015 was a turning point. Things were bad before that, but 2015 was a turning point for Nigeria. The Boko Haram terrorists who used to put on the military uniform. They dress like those. They dress like the military, right? They have khakis and all that stuff. They they took off the khakis and they became civilian terrorists. They took on another name, right? So they're still in operation to this day. They're still cleansing villages, ethnic cleansing. They're still persecuting Christians. They're still kidnapping people. They've just changed their name. It's still the same people um, causing all sorts of havoc all across the country. And then the president who ruled from 2015 to 2023, he was the one who every president before him has inflated the currency, but they do it, step by step. But they do it, little by little. But the last president, the Boko Haram spokesperson, he printed about $50 billion worth of local currency. May not be a big deal for you guys. $50 billion is like what Joe Biden prints in a second to give to Israel. But for us, that's a lot of money. So he printed
Yeah.
a $50 billion worth of local currency and just
Mm.
flooded the economy with it. And everything since so he did that around, so he had been doing it gradually, but he just dialed it to 11 in the COVID period 2020. And since then, the economy has the spiral. I mean, if you check, you could just Google Nigerian inflation from, you'll see how to, or rather, a better metric to use is the dollar to naira exchange rate. Because our central bank can just type up any nonsense and claim that this is the inflation level, but it's much worse than they say. So you'll see that around 2020, 2021, the naira took a nosedive against the dollar, and things have been going bad since. So he left in 2023, just 2 years ago, and a new guy came in who decided to take his policies to the next level. So you can only imagine. So that's where we're at now. So the country is as unsafe as it has ever been. The country is poorer than it has ever been. The
Mhm.
country is more divided than it has ever been. So everything is at an all-time. Every negative metric you can think of, every negative metric you can think of, the country is at an all-time high, and every positive metric you can think of. Nigeria is currently has the highest number of citizens in extreme poverty in the entire world. In the entire world, so we have well over 100 million people in extreme poverty. It used to be just poverty before, but extreme
Mhm.
poverty. So we have that here, and of course, you can only that crime um, would be in the wake of that. All sorts of crimes, murders, kidnappings, ritual killings, and so on. So I could go on and on and on, but I believe the point has been made, or I hope it has been
Yeah,
made.
I can see why it's so important now to spread the economic truth out there. So do people kind of recognize this? Is there any sense in the general population why this is happening, that the printing of billions of dollars led directly to this inflation, the price
Um,
inflation?
this is a tough question to answer because everyone is
Hmm.
talking about, everyone knows, it's public, it's common knowledge now that printing money um, causes price inflation. Everyone knows that, or most people know that now. But I don't think they really know it. That's the problem. Like even our analysts
Hmm.
on Twitter, they would say it, and then when we say the same thing and talk about it. So when we say money printing is what's responsible for the price inflation that Nigeria is facing, when we say things like that, what we call for is for an absolute stop to money printing. And then you have another group of um, economists, analysts who say money printing is bad, but it should only be done. But it should be done in moderation. So people know, but they don't really. They don't really know. They don't really know. They think that you can't have. There's this saying: you can't have growth without inflation. That there's a growth inflation trade-off, which is just very stupid. I tried to explain it, but the gatekeepers, the analysts, the economists that are gatekeeping the truth. But we'll still do what we're doing. So people have an idea, but they don't really understand um, how bad it is. They still think some inflation is good.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, it's the same story here. I mean, we have
No,
the luxury of being the United States and having a robust economy that is leeching away, but it's still here for the most part. So,
yeah,
but yeah, the attitudes towards economics at all is pretty similar. People don't quite get it. They kind of understand, yeah, we printed all this money, especially during COVID, but they don't put it together that that's the direct cause. They blame things like corporate greed or
corporate
whatever,
greed.
some other boogeyman.
Supply issues, supply chain issues. That was the lie in
Supply chain
2020,
issues. Yeah.
all over the world. Yeah, it's the same stupid story everywhere.
I'm
I
sure
know
that
more
had
about
some
it.
effect. Yeah.
Yeah, but that effect is temporary. It's never
Yeah.
permanent. So it's when the inflation is lingering, it keeps on going, then there's more to it than supply chain issues. For Christ's sake, the supply
hmm
chains have picked up since 2021, 2022, but prices are still rising. So, um, yeah.
Yeah, something interesting that was on your podcast with Saifedean, the Bitcoin Standard podcast. He said that the difference between countries now, like we have inflation as well, but why it's not maybe as bad as other countries is that we developed before we got fiat money. So
Yeah.
I wonder if you have thought about that and do you agree? Do you think that's true?
Oh, yeah, I agree 100%. Not just fiat money. Okay, let me tell you one thing at a time. So, I don't think Nigeria ever had a proper, okay, since industrialization started, right? Since we went from subsistence agriculture, where we are just farming to feed ourselves, since um, capitalism, trade, industrialization became a thing. We haven't had commodity monies. So the British came here and colonized us for centuries, and then we used the British pound, and the naira was just the Nigerian version of the pound. It was, I think, a naira to a pound at the time when the British were here, and then, or rather, around, we used the pound till I think about 1971 or something, and then we had our own currency, the naira, which was just a version of the pound. It was like our own version. So the rate was fixed based on the previous pound, the previous value of the pound. That's what it was.
hmm
So we've never really had um, a commodity, or since industrialization became a global phenomenon, we haven't had um, uh, commodity monies here. So obviously, all we've had is fiat. So things have been going downwards since then. But in addition to that, as I keep saying, and I probably should write an article or maybe make a video about this. Africa hasn't had its day with capitalism. Africa hasn't had its day with
Mm.
capitalism. Um, so in the 19th century, and even before, with people like Adam Smith and the classicals, J.B. Say, and so on, you know, um, the state wasn't, the state didn't intervene so much in money and markets in the earlier, 17th, 18th, 19th century, or let me say from the 18th century. It wasn't, the state wasn't as involved as it has become now.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this conversation, please give me a follow, a like, a rating, whatever you can, depending on the platform. And you can find a bunch of bonus content on my locals channel. Link is in the description. Give me a follow there for free, and if you do subscribe, you get access to the full back catalog of episodes. There are really good evergreen episodes that I'm proud of, including one I did on the TikTok ban 9 months ago when it first passed. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the show.
Let me start from when we became independent. So Africa was on its way to becoming to developing while the whites were here. And my people are going to hate me for this. Maybe some libertarians might actually hate me for this. We were better off when the whites were here. Let me speak of South Africa because the whites left South Africa in 1990 or 1991. So it's fairly recent, relatively recent. South Africa has been going down since the whites left. So this isn't a race thing. It's just and pointing, and I mean, I'm black, so what do I have to gain by hailing the white man? So
Yeah.
it's just a statement. It's just a statement of fact. So when Africans started pushing for independence, now I don't know how true this is, but it has been, there's evidence for it. A couple of people have documented it. I read a book by Cleon Skousen called The Naked Communist many years ago, and I don't know if you've read the book. It was a very interesting book, but he mentioned Naked Communist. It's very interesting. It's a very great book. So he mentioned, he sort of alluded to the fact that the African revolutions were actually socialist revolutions. So when people were crying out for independence in Africa, all the people who were crying for independence were socialists. So some countries got more socialism than others. Our founding fathers, as they call them, again, this is going to get me a lot of hate if my people, when they eventually watch this. Our founding fathers were communists, were socialists. They didn't, but they weren't as bad as the Mugabes and the Sesesekos, you know,
Hmm.
of the world. So they weren't as bad, right? So they were able to imbibe some of the Western capitalist culture, and that's why Nigeria isn't as bad as Zimbabwe, although we're pretty much already there now. But as at that time, so most of the revolutions that took place in Africa were socialist revolutions. So when Africans took over um, governing African nations, they ran away from, I wanted to say Western philosophy, but socialism still is Western philosophy. Let me say they ran from the West to the East. They left the US and Britain and went to Russia. So they adopted socialist policies, and basically we never had our day with capitalism. That's why we are here. If if let's say those who fought for independence, in my country got independence in 1960, 1st of October. If those people fought for independence, knew, and to think that um, Murray Rothbard was alive at that time,
Hmm.
Mises was alive, Human Action was out. I believe Man, Economy, and State was out in the 60s as well. Um,
When was this revolution?
1960 was
'60.
Nigeria. We didn't fight for our independence. They just signed it over to us.
Hmm.
Ours was peaceful. I don't know if you know this, but those African countries, if you notice, they usually have flags with yellow, green, and red in them. I don't know if you've noticed, it's a thing.
Hmm.
So, the red stands for blood. So those countries who fought for their independence have the red on their flag, but we didn't fight for ours. So
Oh,
ours is just green, white, and green. Agriculture and peace.
wow.
That's pretty much what our flag. So we didn't fight for our independence, which uh, may not have been a good thing because the Western influence was still very strong when they, even after independence. So anyway, but that's neither here nor there. So so we've never had our deal with capitalism. Is basically what I was saying. If by some means the founding fathers had gotten hold of a copy of Human Action, and these men were British trained men. If you watch old videos of the Nigerian founding fathers, they spoke with thick British accents. They don't speak like I do. They spoke with thick British accents. I, So if they had just had access to any of Hayek's works, any of Mary Rothbard, uh, Ludwig von Mises, who knows what would have
Hmm.
happened? But um, instead they
Who
went the
knows?
Marxist route, and here we are.
Yeah,
Here we
I
are today.
mean, we have the access to these books now, and it doesn't seem to make a difference for most people. I think people that want power are not really interested in helping the general public. They just want the power. So yeah, I mean,
So
I don't want
so
to.
there is a man. So our country was founded by basically three men or four men. So there was um a man called Obafemi Awolowo. There's another called Nnamdi Azikiwe, and another
Hmm.
called Amadu Bello. They are from the three major ethnic groups in the country. So there are three major ethnicities here. So one of them, Awolowo, I think he genuinely wanted what was good for his people. I can't say much about the other two, but I genuinely think
Yes.
Awolowo, now I could be wrong, but I think Awolowo was not a power hungry person per se. I think he loved his people, but he was a proper communist, a thorough through and through socialist. So I think that was the problem. So if someone like Awolowo had a different orientation, maybe things would have been different. So, but who knows? Again,
Yeah, it would be nice. And that kind of brings me to the next point is how do we share these messages in a way that lands with people? Because, like I said, a lot of people will just shrug it off. They already have their preconceived ideas of what will be good for people and good for themselves sometimes only. But so you go around to universities, you talk to students about these ideas. What kind of things actually work? What sticks and what doesn't?
so different things work for different people. I've come to
Hmm.
learn. So in my country, people are poor and they are desperate for solutions. So pretty much anything you tell them now, they are willing to listen. I haven't spoken to a single non stakeholder. And by that, I mean like government people, economists, analysts, all those kinds of people. When I talk to regular people, I haven't met a single one who would say what you're saying is nonsense. Initially, everyone has that. Initially, everyone has that. You must be crazy thing, But then they start to ask you
Hmm.
questions: Who will build the roads? Who will do this? And then, so the last major event I did, I do big events and smaller ones, but the last big event I did was in September. And after I spoke, some of the students came back to meet me, and then they asked me, they said, this thing you are saying can't work for such and such reason. It's all the same stuff you've heard before. Who would build the roads? What would happen to hospitals and schools and all that stuff? And I broke it down. So my intention was to go there and teach for a day and leave. That was my intention. But I ended up spending, I think 3, 4 days I ended up spending there. Maybe five. No, it was 4 days. I ended up spending 5 days on the campus. So I got a hotel close to the place and I stayed there. So I would go to the school, the university, and I would talk to them daily. Sometimes they would come to like the hotel where I was, would sit in the lobby, and maybe I'll buy them lunch or dinner or breakfast as the case was. And then I would just talk to them about these things. So they kept asking question after question after question after question, and I kept answering. And at the end of the day, every single one of them who showed interest, who came back to ask questions, um, they all walked away saying this is correct. And they all asked, every single one of them asked the same question: How do we get people to know this? What do we do next? They all asked the same question. So that because um, I believe that sometimes people are so desperate for um, solutions that they are open to anything, right? And if fortunately I was one who met those students, if they were met by socialists who told them that the reason why they are bad is because of greedy capitalists, they would believe that as well. They'll believe that as well. So unfortunately, I was the one who met them. I believe when people are desperate, when things get, as they say, good times create weak men create bad times create strong men. So Nigeria has been in a perpetual state of weak men creating hard times since before I was born to this day, right? So I think the strong men are finally rising, and I really hope that this thing catches on. Now, as my own, what I would say to maybe you, to Americans, to non-Africans about. Okay, so good. You listened to the podcast episode with Sefudin Amos, and I kept
Hmm.
praising him. I kept saying,
Hmm.
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the third world because he's Palestinian. So I don't know if it's the third world mentality. But I found that Saifuddin has a better way of explaining these things to people like myself than maybe some who are more theoretical, more philosophical in the way they like. Hans Hermann Hoppe is absolutely brilliant, but if you
Yeah.
bring Hoppe to a university here, they would maybe two people would understand what he's saying. So I live in
Yes.
a
Yeah.
very I live in a very utilitarian society, and I'm trying to get libertarians in the West to see this. I live in a very utilitarian society. They don't care about
Mm-hmm.
ethics and morals and principles. Nobody cares about that here. Absolutely, just a handful of us care about that stuff. And I've been trying to pass this message across. So when you are talking to, and more, I've realized that even Westerners are the same way, only a little less so. People don't care about they don't care about principle. They want to know how it affects them. They want to understand, which is why, and the evidence of this is they always ask, who will build the roads? No matter how ethical your argument against the state is, no matter how moral it is, they ask you, who will build the roads? So I love Michael Malice. I love Michael Malice, right?
Oh, me too.
Absolutely adore
Yes.
him. I hope to get on a show someday, and I would love to talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
So he was on the Patrick Bet David podcast um, a while ago, and they were asking him about anarchy. And in my opinion, he did a terrible job. Patrick Bet David is from Iran. He has the same third world mindset as I do, as Saifuddin does, as I've come to see that even Westerners have. He has that same mindset. So he was trying to make a logical, ethical argument. It wasn't working. I could tell how. So I don't know if you've seen these videos where people do videos of how African parents behave, how Arab parents behave, how Latino parents behave. So
Oh, yeah.
in watching those kinds of videos, I've learned that non-English, non-European people are pretty much the same. So it's like Europeans and the rest of the world, and it's not even all of Europe. It's like England, France, those kinds of places, the US, Canada versus the rest of the world. So it's the rest of us are pretty much the same. We have we talk with our faces without saying words. Like I could tell when um, Michael Malice had lost Patrick Bet David, and I really hope this thing that I'm saying now blows up. I could tell he lost Patrick. I'm African. I'm Nigerian. Right? We Our parents talk to us with their eyes. You can tell when
Mm-hmm.
you've lost. I can tell when I've lost them. So I could tell when um, Michael Malice had lost Patrick Bet David because he was trying to argue principle to a utilitarian, to a pragmatist, if that's the word, to someone who believes in pragmatism. Right. So if we are going to if we are going to win this war, we need to put aside the ethics of liberty. We need to put all those things aside. In my DMs, people always reach out to me, like in my country, whenever they see me saying stuff online. I've never had anybody ask me to make an ethical argument or a moral argument why the state is. They just think you're stupid if you say that kind of thing. But every question is okay, how do we build the roads? What do we do about security? People want to know how what you're saying would help them personally. So I think we really need to, as libertarians, we need to adjust our strategy. We can speak like philosophers when we are speaking to professors, when we are speaking to people in academia, but when you are talking to regular people, I mean, the fact that America has conservatives, the fact that America has political conservatives tells you that conservatives are utilitarian, right? They're like they don't think ethically or because they also believe in the state. They believe in the state. They just believe the state should enforce the laws that they want to enforce. They don't see how the state is unethical, how the state is immoral. So
Mm-hmm.
conservatives, I believe they would be one, and I've been saying this for a while. I tweet at Dave Smith and a couple of people. I believe that conservatives can be won over. Um, I, I was supposed to, following your outline, I was supposed to explain my path to libertarianism, but it's fine. I was a political conservative. I considered myself a MAGA, even though I'm Nigerian, everyone pays attention to U.S. politics. Absolutely everyone in this part of the world. There are people in Nigeria who know more about U.S. politics than people in America. So, so I considered myself a MAGA conservative, and I
Hmm.
was very easily moved over to libertarianism. So I can see I can see American conservatives being shifting over to libertarianism if the arguments are made politely and correctly. So yeah, I've been talking for like 6 hours now. I'll stop now.
Okay. Yes, I think conservatives can be moved, but they are, like you said, they are still in favor of the state as long as it's doing what they believe in. And morality is important, but you're right. I think the morality should not be the thing because people care about how it affects them. I do think freedom and no government would be the most moral position, the most moral thing to do. Um, but that's not why I want it. I want it because people will thrive. It just happens that the
Yeah,
moral thing also aligns with what makes people thrive and be successful. So that's what I
yeah,
want.
I agree. I agree. I think I think libertarians should do a better job explaining to answering the questions of the conservatives.
Hmm.
Who would when they ask who would build the roads, they need an answer. They
Yeah,
need an answer. And
and they,
sometimes, yeah, yeah, go on, please, go on.
I
Oh
think
no,
they
say
can
what?
understand that they can understand how to build a road. Like anyone could build a road. So the technical part isn't
Yeah,
that. It's how do you decide where they go? How do you, what if somebody's property is in the way? Then what do we do? How do we adjudicate those decisions, right?
yeah. And I don't think any of those things are problems, right? None of those things are problems to me. Even before I read any Walter
No.
Block or Hopper or any of these people, I figured these things out myself. You know, how
Hmm.
security would work in a free market system, how roads would work. You know, reading those people helped me work out the details, but I sort of figured it out already, how those things would
Hmm.
work. So it's not so what we need to do. What I think I'm not an expert on these things, but I can only speak to my experience. We need to explain to people how these things can work, and so we'll lay it out this way: we don't need the state because the state is we can give all the moral arguments. The state is unethical, it's evil, and so on. And
Hmm.
the market can actually provide those things and provide them more efficiently. So we need to break it down to people. And there is so much work on this already. There's Walter Block, Hopper himself, Dr. Bob Murphy, who I adore. They've written so many things about legal systems in an anarcho capitalist society. They've written about how you pretty much privatize courts, defense, and so on. You know, so we just need to make these things more practical, more popular. You know, I really hope someday to go. I believe I might be the man to make Crowder change his mind because in my life
Yeah,
I haven't come across anyone who thinks like I do, like Steven Crowder. I haven't
I heard you.
seen. Yeah,
Sorry to interrupt. I heard you talk about you came up watching Steven Crowder every day. That's awesome because I did too.
yeah,
It was about 2016 when I started kind of branching
yeah.
out into more libertarian thinkers, but it
Oh
was a
wow,
nice gateway.
wow, interesting. Oh, so for me, I started Steven Crowder 2015, 2016 thereabout. That's when I knew he
Hmm.
existed. 20 it was that period, right? So that's when I started to watch Steven Crowder, and I watched him pretty much. So I at the time I couldn't afford to um, pay for more club, so I couldn't watch the extra stuff. So whenever it's
Hmm.
so he used to have Mondays through Thursdays. Then Gerald, Courtney, and Jared used to do the morning show one time on Fridays. So when it's Thursday, I kid you not, I'm very sad. I will just get sad because I don't get to hear from Crowder till it
Yeah.
was that it was I don't listen to Crowder anymore, right? Because
Hmm.
I feel like I've outgrown the conservative message. But I love the man. I mean, what I used to do then was when it's Friday and Saturday and Sunday, I would go back and look for much older audio episodes of Crowder and start to listen to that stuff. He really was a very big influence because uh, I live in a society where um very few people think like I do. Like very few people think like I do. And as at that time, I hadn't met anyone who thought the way I did. Everyone thought I was crazy. Right? My family just loved me because we're family. They don't have a choice. But they thought something must be wrong with this guy, you know. And then all of a sudden, I find some guy saying the things that I've been thinking. It was, you know, so it was very refreshing. It was very refreshing, and I thank God for all that because that eventually led me down the libertarian path where I currently am. So I really love to meet Crowder. I hope he's cool in real life. Like I really hope he's cool. They say don't meet your heroes. Um, I've met a couple of them. I wasn't disappointed, but let's just say it wasn't what I expected. But I really hope he's cool. I seriously hope he's cool. Yeah, so yeah,
Yeah,
so
I
that's
think it'd be
just
cool. Yeah, it's really awesome that you had even heard of Crowder because, I mean, as big as he is in the conservative movement, if you're not in that little political bubble, it's really hard to find anyone who knows who Crowder is in America. So,
mm,
that you found him in Nigeria is really cool.
yeah. And I'm not the only one there. I know another person who really likes Crowder. So there are like two of us in the country. And then I introduced him to a couple of my friends. This was then. But yeah. So yeah, it's YouTube. You know, thank God for YouTube. Thank God for YouTube. So
Yeah,
that was how I found it.
I also heard you say that you came across an interview with Spike Cohen and Dave Smith on
Yeah.
Patrick Bet David's show, and that really was
Yes.
a catalyst for you.
Yeah.
Which I'm
So
looking at the time on that, and it wasn't that long ago. So
no.
you were
2021 or 22.
21 or 22. I can't remember, but
Yeah. Yeah. So
so
I'm very
you
new to
are,
libertarianism.
yeah, but you're quite well read, probably more than me, which is
Um,
not saying much for a libertarian, but for the general population is probably top 0.01%. So that's awesome.
so for me, it's because I'm a student of, or I studied economics at university. So I was
Hmm.
already familiar with the works of Keynes and Adam Smith and all those people. So when I started to do when I was looking to get a degree, my master's. You know, when I was I was trying to get into Caltech, that didn't work out because I couldn't afford it. It's not like I couldn't get it, I couldn't afford it. So I just decided to read online, and I kept on looking up as much as I just kept looking stuff up. And interestingly, back then I came across the Mises Institute. I watched a couple of their videos, and the person I watched was talking about Hayek's theory of production, and one my mind was blown. You know, I was like, what is this? This is like nothing I was taught in school. It was very interesting. So I eventually got to meet, to learn of Hayek and Thomas Sowell, Milton Friedman. So I was already um, familiar with their works. So I had an idea. So if you've read some of Hayek, if you've read Thomas Sowell, when you're reading through Mises or Rothbard, they've already done much of the work for you. Let me put it that way. So it won't be entirely strange to you. So the Spike Cohen story. When I was watching to be honest, at this time I still considered myself a political conservative. I didn't care for libertarians, but I decided why dismiss them when you've never really heard them out, right? Because I always heard people say um, anarcho-capitalists are crazy. Every time I never saw a positive comment about anarcho-capitalists, not once. You know, and people would say low births, low birtharians, and
Yep.
I
Yeah.
I just thought these are silly people, right? How can we live without a government? Please, that was what I thought, you know. So I thought these people aren't worth my time. So I
Yeah.
focused on the socialists when I was a conservative. So I studied Marxism. I wanted to make sure that I understand what these crazy Marxists are saying, and then my goal was to defeat them. So eventually, I just thought, like, you just dismissed. Now, this is because of my Christian faith, right? I'm not going to go. out and hear everybody out because um, there isn't enough time in the world to do that. But I can't actively dismiss something um, that I had access to and not know anything about it. So it just seemed a bit hypocritical to me. I was basically surrounded by libertarians online. You know, I always saw libertarians online. I just never interacted with any one of them. So I decided, let me give these libertarians a shot. So I was watching that episode of Patrick Bet David and Spike Cohen, Larry Sharp, and uh, Jessica Vaughan and Dave Smith were on that day. And I just thought everything they're saying, I agree with. I believe these things, and that was what. And then, of course, I heard Dave Smith say he's a Rothbardian, and I didn't know what that was. So I looked it up, found out it's a political philosophy built around a man called Murray Rothbard. And then I started to look into. I didn't like him at first, but eventually came to love his work. So that's how I got here now. I owe it to all three men, but specifically to Dave Smith, because if he hadn't mentioned Rothbard, I might have been what you guys would call maybe a beltway libertarian. Although I don't think I'm that. I don't think I'm given to. I don't think I'm given to what they believe. So maybe I would have just stayed a conservative that was very, very economically libertarian, but conservative on other issues. So on
Mm-hmm.
social issues. So yeah, that's it. So I thank God that I watched that episode and that Dave Smith mentioned the word Rothbardian, and that was what set me on this. And it was so I had known about Hayek and Sowell and Milton Friedman, but to I never thought to go out and do something about it. But once I read Rothbard, I knew I just knew something had to be done. I can't explain it,
Yeah.
but I knew I had to do something about that. I was like someone else has to hear this. I can't be the only one. Luckily for me, there are a handful of Rothbardians in Nigeria. They've contacted me after seeing me on the Mises Institute shows, Rothbard Radio, Human Action. So they've seen me there. Some met me through Saifuddin's podcast and Robert Breedlove, What is Money. So I've been there as well. So people
Mm-hmm.
from different places reached out to me, not just Nigeria, but other parts of Africa, and said, we love what you're doing. And they all said the same thing. I thought I was the only one. I thought I was the only one. So we
Yeah.
started our community. We started our community. We all live in different parts of Nigeria and Africa, but we still have like online virtual meetings. We talk and stuff. So it's been great, and we're working together independently to reach out to as many people as we can. We have some things planned for this year, but let me not get ahead of myself. So yeah,
That's great. Yeah, that's the awesome thing about the internet is now we have this community that's around the world. It's not just localized to your village, your town, whatever. We can talk to people. I can talk to you, and I can talk to somebody in China tomorrow. It's
yeah.
great. So, how long have you been doing this work that you're doing to kind of go out and proselytize about this, the economic stuff?
So June would make it exactly 3 years since I started. So I started in 2023 on the 10th of
Hmm.
June. On the 10th of June. That was my first ever event. I had been talking online, trying to convince people online and stuff, and it wasn't really working out because, as I said, you meet all the educated idiots online, right? Nobody comes to the internet to, or at least not in our circle. People who do politics, economics, they don't come online to learn. They come to talk. Right? I mean, who comes to the internet to Twitter to learn, right? So I thought
Me.
very naive. Okay, good. You are one of the lucky, the decent human beings in the world. So I thought, okay,
Yeah.
I'm learning these things. How do I reach people? So uh, getting a following on YouTube is very difficult. So, and I hate Instagram and TikTok and all that stuff. So Twitter is the best place to go. So I started to, talk to people on Twitter, and I have made great friends on Twitter. I've actually had people convert to. I don't mean I've had people go from socialism to anarcho-capitalism. No step in
Wow.
between. Yeah, on people I met on Twitter, I've never met them in real life, and right now they are seriously bashing the Keynesians, the socialists, the pretty much everyone who is not anarcho-capitalist. So that's fun to watch. But those people are they are very very few. It's just a handful of them. So it really wasn't working. And to be honest, I don't think those people would have I could be wrong, but I don't think some of those people would have heard me out had they not seen me on the shows. Like I'm on your show now, I've been on a couple of other shows, so it gave me some form of credibility that this young man knows what he's talking about. Right. So I don't know if I was just talking on my own, people would have said yes, this guy. Okay, maybe there is one guy. Anyway, so I decided this thing isn't working out. Right. I'm just getting um ignored by the big accounts in my country and nobody cares about what I'm doing. So I said, I don't care. I'm going to take it to the people. So I was able to get some money. Um about the thousand, like 1,200, or let me say $1,300, as you guys would say. We call it 1,300. I don't know why you guys call it that. So I got about that amount, and it's a small sum, um, but it was enough to host my first event here. Interestingly, this was what I wore for the first event, this same outfit. So um,
Huh?
so I had it, yeah, I had it made specifically for that event. So I got a venue outside of the university because I didn't want any smoke. So I got a venue outside of the university, spoke to some students, invited them, they told their friends, and I had about 50 people who got cameras, sound equipment. The sound was terrible, the recording was terrible, but the message was out there. Fed them, paid transportation fees for some of them to go back, and that was it. They told their friends who told their friends, and people were calling me from different places. We like what we're hearing. How can you come to our school? I'm strapped for cash. I don't have resources to do it as much as I would love to. But it's as I said on Mark's show, if I know my people, if I have the money, I can change. I just hope someday. I wish we had like a libertarian billionaire. That's what I wish we had a libertarian George Soros who actually wanted to spread libertarianism in the world. Someone who would just say, I mean this. I'm not trying to be arrogant or anything, but I know my people. There is a certain amount of money I would have that we can convert Nigeria into an anarcho-capitalist society in 10 years. I know my country. I know my countrymen. I would say more about that maybe after the recording because I don't want to say that on air. I don't want to offend anybody, but
Sure.
I know my people. Yeah, so yeah, that's how it's been going. It's going great, much slower than I would like, but I thank God regardless.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we talked about, when conditions get bad enough, people are willing to listen to anything that will change, right? So we kind of have an example of that in Argentina lately. Javier
Yeah,
Milei running things over there. He's doing a pretty good job. Not perfect, I would say, but still much more libertarian than any other leader that I know of.
yeah.
So
hmm
there's a
hmm
good example for you.
I maintain that he's the best world leader right now, as far as we know.
Hmm.
Maybe there could be some guy in Botswana who is implementing libertarian policies, but nobody knows about him. But I'm just saying, as far as we know, he's the best leader in the world now. He's far from perfect, but he's all we've got. And I'm really hoping he succeeds. I have a lot riding on um, Milei's success, a whole lot, because if Milei succeeds, then all of us as libertarians we have an example because people kept saying what you say works only people keep saying what you guys say only works in theory, it doesn't work in practice, you know so so if and we know those of us who can think abstractly, those of us um who can have abstract thoughts, we don't need to see an example of a thing to know that it can um, work. We know that you don't need examples for a thing to be true. Right? But when Millet succeeds, and I really hope he takes this thing very seriously and succeeds, and when he succeeds, whew, I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to be very, very loud. I'm going to be loud.
Yes.
I'm going to. be very loud. Anyone that says anything, I point to Millet, that it works. And I think I'm way more radical than Millet is in terms of not in terms of my personality. I'm actually very tame and calm in my personal life. But in terms of
Hmm.
policy, I am way more radical than Millet is. I won't say much more than that.
Yeah, that's great. And if it really does start working, that's kind of a shortcut because you said, people ask you all these questions. How is it going to work? How is it going to work? And they can't really see it in their mind. But if they actually see a real world
Yeah,
example, you can just point to that and say, look, it's right there.
yeah, yeah. The unfortunate thing with it is that you know very well that it's either the statists are going to try to downplay what he has done or claim that that's what they've been saying all this time. When we were
Hmm.
saying when I was because not to brag or anything, but my finger is really on the pulse. Long before people were talking about Millet, I was already talking about Millet. Because I follow Doug Casey and Matt Smith. I don't know if you know who Doug Casey is. He's like a
Oh, yeah, yeah.
libertarian OG. Oh yeah. So he mentioned Millet a long time ago, like months before anybody was talking about him. And I was like, I was very interested. I was very interested because um, Argentina's situation is very similar to Nigeria's. Then he was just beginning to like nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew anything about Millet. Very few people did. So I looked him up and I kept talking about Millet, telling people about him. I'm glad he blew up and I'm glad that he won. So when he
Mhm.
started becoming relatively popular and people were saying these things aren't going to work, these things aren't going to work. And then today, those same people are saying we said it all along. I mean, people in my country. I'm like, people are not serious. So yeah, so can't wait.
Well, man, I've taken, I think, enough of your time for now. I could probably listen to you talk for a couple more hours, but maybe we can do this again and pick it up. Um, where do you want people to go to support you? How can people find you, share your work? What's the best place?
So my Twitter is the best place to reach me. It's so I have two Twitter accounts. The regular one is just Econ Bro, ECON at ECONBREAU. And then I have at ECONBREAU2, the digit, the number two. So I opened that one because the second account, because um, due to some payment issues, I couldn't get verified on the main account. So I opened the second one and then I solved the issue. So I'm verified on that account. My hope was that the account would grow big enough and I'll get interactions and maybe start to make some of that sweet Elon money and use to fund my work. So that's
Hmm.
why I opened that. So it would be great if people can follow me on both accounts. Um, but if anyone is interested in supporting, if you want to reach me, you can reach me. My DMs are always open on both accounts. If anyone wants to support, um, I would send you the link to the fundraiser. I'd appreciate it if you donate whatever you can and tell your friends about me. Maybe you know someone else who has a show. um, They can donate and then ask their audience to do the same. Every little bit counts. Thank you. I don't just need cash, right? If it will be possible, if it will be affordable to send books, maybe there's some big shipping deal and you
Hmm.
can ship libertarian literature here as many as possible so that I can so I like to go with simple books, economics in one lesson, per balance, how to think about the economy, primer, the case against the Fed, what has government done to our money, simple short books like that. No human
I
action,
have
no
that
human
one right.
economy and stuff. Oh, wonderful. I have it too, but the digital copy. So I
Oh, nice.
need things. I need things like this to give out to people. So if anyone wants to donate any of these things, if someone has an old microphone that they are not using or an old camera or something, I intend to start making videos. I'm using my phone to do this. My laptop is trash, but I can manage it. And I'm hoping to get a camera, and start to put out videos and stuff. So yeah, any kind of help, any little bit helps. Tell a friend. follow on Twitter.
I will.
Anything helps. Pray for me. Yeah.
Definitely will be putting your name out there. That's Econ Bro, Breau on X. And in his profile, you can find a link to the Nigerian Liberty Project if you want to support. We'll put that all on the screen and links in the comments here. Thank you for joining me, brother. Very nice to talk to you. I hope things turn around over there, and I hope you can make some progress.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you to the listeners. And I hope things work out for you guys over there, because things are getting pretty bad there as well. So I hope things work out for all of us. God bless you.
Amen.